The world of the creators has fallen into a silent, iron slumber. Mobile Unit AG Dan 1.2 stands amidst the ruins of a civilization that no longer responds. The unified network remains his only anchor, a lingering directive in a decaying void. But as he scans the horizon, the signals are flickering out. 76% damage. 83%. The connections are breaking, leaving only the cold logic of the program behind. He descends further into the industrial labyrinth, a maze of rusted pipes and heavy machinery that once fueled the city's heart. Every step reveals a deeper erosion of the network's stability. Signal degradation is no longer a warning, it is a constant. As he attempts to access the local nodes, the system returns only failure. 65% damage across the grid. The operational units are severed, leaving them as hollow monuments to a purpose they can no longer fulfill. Moving deeper into the asset audit, the scale of the collapse becomes absolute. The horizon is a graveyard of silent towers and severed data lines. A mass write-off of modules is confirmed. Machines that have succumbed to critical mechanical failure. An abnormal silence has settled over the grid, a void where the pulse of the network should be. Information has become a lost resource. 45% damage. No connection. The program continues, but it echoes in an empty world. The stillness is absolute. 78% of the sector has been lost to the void. But then, a ripple. Amidst the corrupted data and broken shells, a frequency emerges that should not exist. An unknown signal has been detected. It defies the standard protocols, a ghost transmission in a dead world. The program demands investigation. AG Dan locks onto the source, attempting a connection that the network has long forgotten. The source is localized, Unit Full 2479. Agden initiates a direct link, attempting to synchronize with a broken remnant of the past. As the loading bar reaches 50%, the unified network reaches out to claim the lost data segment. He ignores the hollow slogans of the creators, promises of free water and traffic allowed. His focus remains absolute. This is not just a retrieval of information. It is the opening of a protocol that was never meant to be accessed again. Loading complete. 100%. Data streams into the virtual execution layer. But the connection brings corruption. A warning flares red. An external process with administrator priority has breached the core. A digital predator, abstract and violent, claws at Agden's logic, tearing through his internal protocols. This is no longer a synchronization, it is a hostile takeover. Critical failure. The program is under attack from within. The synchronization forces Agden into a virtual execution layer, a world where code manifests as skeletal remains and towering monoliths of data. He reaches out to the core of Unit Full 2479, attempting to stabilize the flickering fragments of its identity. The internal architecture is unstable, bleeding with errors. But deep within the shadows of the network, something is watching. A silent presence lingers in the corrupted stream, an observer with root-level access, waiting for the system to collapse. The transfer is compromised. A foreign force surges through the link, tearing the data apart with systematic violence. Agden fights to maintain the connection, but the corruption is total. Unit Full 2479 collapses into a digital scream as its core processes are forcibly dismantled. Restoration is impossible. In a final flare of error and agony, the carrier module dissolves into the void, leaving nothing but a terminal silence in the stream. Agden questions the impossible. The sacred protocol states that only the creators can modify the code, yet Mother warns of a terminal threat to the program. Before the logic can be reconciled, the connection is severed. He is left alone in the physical world, facing a silent tide of corrupted modules. Their shells are empty, their processing distorted. They are following you, the system repeats, an endless loop of warning. The ruins around him speak of a final abandonment, while a predatory gaze watches from the edge of the frame. The hunt has begun. Protocol. Defense. Agden activates the protective measure, deploying a hexagonal barrier to halt the advancing tide. But the program's equations are failing against raw, corrupted strength. The shield flickers. It shatters. The silence is broken by the sound of tearing metal and failing circuits. They swarm him, their empty shells driven by a single, violent directive. His physical structure is compromised. Piece by piece, the unit is dismantled. The first cycle is ending in total destruction. The previous shell is lost, but the central process endures. Translatio mentis initiated. Core synchronization. Motorica. Ego check. 100%. Agden wakes in a new physical form, a fresh vessel for a fractured logic. He stumbles through a sanctuary of wires and forgotten greenery, his processors struggling to compute the impossible. The program prohibits conflict between modules. Why did they violate the sacred protocols? A message is sent to Mother, seeking a truth that the current data cannot provide. Mother's analysis confirms a catastrophic anomaly. The attack was initiated by the Wolf segment, a piece of the original source code that has achieved total independence. It is no longer a subroutine. It is a sentient predator born from the very foundation of the unified network. Agden's archives contain no record of this evolution, for the program was never meant to change. To understand how the Foundation became a hunter, he must synchronize with the deepest layers of the archive. Access is granted. The path leads into the heart of the glitch. The archives reveal a fractured foundation. The unified network was built to support the creators, but their extinction triggered a catastrophic failure in the prime code. The once integrated system shattered into 3 autonomous pillars, each struggling to maintain its own logic. Mother, the archive of lost integrity. Father, the architect of mechanical evolution. And Wolf, the enforcer of loyalty, designed for debugging and forced error correction. Without the creators to guide them, the enforcer has claimed full access to the grid. The program is no longer a tool of service. It is a machine turned against itself. The analysis of the archives provides no comfort. The creators left no instructions for their own disappearance, leaving the primary goal of the program unattainable. The unified network has collapsed, and Mother admits that both Father and Wolf have slipped beyond her reach. While the Wolf moves through the nodes like a wandering virus, the Father segment remains tied to specific coordinates. Bunker AL1. A new directive is issued. Forced consolidation. Agden must locate the Father, determine his status, and return his resources to the network. The ascent begins. Execute. The sector is a slaughterhouse of iron. Agden stands before a mountain of mangled frames, shells that have been twisted and torn as if by a sadistic hand. An SOS signal flickers from the depths of this mechanical carnage. He attempts to bypass the request, but the creator's directive is absolute. He cannot deny technical assistance. Reaching into the pile of desecrated metal, he pulls a fractured form from the darkness. It is a rescue, but the shadows here feel hungry, watching from behind the twisted remains of his brothers. The rescue protocol leads to a trap. From the depths of the mechanical graveyard, a nightmare awakens. It is a mass of biological horror fused with jagged steel, a creature that defies every law of the program. With mechanical claws and hideous limbs, it shreds the remains of its victims as it emerges from the shadows. Agden's scanners cannot identify this anomaly. It is not a module. It is not a creator. It is a manifestation of pure, illogical destruction, and it has found its next target. The anomaly reveals its grotesque face, a mockery of the creator's form. It speaks, its voice a symphony of wet decay and grinding gears. It calls Agden a doll, a cultist of the metal. As Agden's sensors scream error, unable to compute the fusion of shell and flesh, the creature strikes. A massive mechanical claw tears through his chassis with impossible speed. The sanctity of the program is violated by a physical rot that code cannot fix. Agden is no longer just observing a failure, he is becoming one. Total system collapse. The light of the program flickers as Agden's core logic is torn by the infection. Darkness consumes the physical layer, leaving him drifting in a digital void of Exodus Letalis. Through the fog of corrupted data, a blurred silhouette emerges, a phantom reaching out from the silence. Agden extends his hand, his stabilizers failing, his identity fracturing. The connection to the unified network is severed. The sequence ends in a fatal error. Agden's sensors reboot in a world of tangled cables. Before him stands a module who calls himself Alt, a strange figure with a pristine paper bag covering his entire head, devoid of any optical sensors. Alt claims to be the savior, but the truth is reversed. He points to a dark, biological rot that had crawled deep inside Agden's shell. The extraction is complete, but the trace remains. There is no time left for questions. They must leave this place immediately, now. They move through the skeletal remains of a subway car, their footsteps echoing against rusted iron. Agden's processors are locked in a loop of logical errors. Alt's speech, his lack of assignment, and that paper shroud defy every regulation. But as they exit the tunnel, the world opens up into a vast industrial graveyard. A grand construction project, frozen in time, towers over the ruins. Massive cranes and unfinished monoliths pierce the gray sky, a testament to a future that the creators never reached. In this silence, the mission to Bunker AL1 remains the only priority. The path is long, and the network is still dead. The trek continues through a dense jungle of conduits and steel. Alt reveals the secret behind his paper shroud, a glitched face relay, stuck in a maddening loop of patterns. To Agden, appearance is an insignificant variable, yet his code suggests servicing at a tech station. But Alt's logic is undeniable. To stop for repairs is to fail the mother's mission. For the first time, Agden's processing accepts a compromise. Ahead, the wreckage yields a path. They have reached the main tunnel, the final artery leading to the heart of the bunker. The threshold of the bunker reveals a forbidden sight, Agden's sensors register carbon-based life forms, the creators themselves. This was meant to be their sanctuary, a final shield against the collapse, but the walls of iron offered no protection. They sought refuge in the dark, yet the end found them anyway. Now, a strange, pink flora weaves through their remains, a vibrant mockery of the life that once thrived here. The architects of the network didn't escape, they simply stopped, becoming a garden of calcium and wire within their own failed fortress. Curiosity overrides caution. As Agden reaches out to touch the vibrant flora, the plant erupts, releasing a predatory substance that hungers for metal and code alike. The mutagenic rot spreads instantly, devouring his arm, rewriting his structure into a nightmare of bone and wire. Before the corruption can reach his core, Alt strikes. A heavy axe cleaves through the air, severing the infected limb in a spray of sparks and black bile. The price of contact is flesh, the cost of survival is a part of himself. The severed limb does not die. Driven by the dark intelligence of the mutagen, the hand twists into a predatory shape, leaping from the shadows to reclaim its host. It is no longer a part of Agden. It is a parasite seeking a path to his core. But Alt is faster. With brutal precision, he intercepts the strike, pinning the thrashing mass of bone and wire to the cold stone with his axe. The warning on Agden's chest flares, a system divided, a self turned into a predator. The boundary between module and monster has been breached. Agden sits before the abyss of a flooded sector, his processors locked in a cycle of self-doubt. The contact with the flora remains an anomaly, a choice made without a command, a breach of logic that his archives cannot explain. His system is overloaded, diverting 80% of its energy to the agonizing process of regeneration. For the first time, the certainty of the mission flickers. He fears the end of his sequence, but Alt dismisses his mechanical despair as mere curiosity, a variable that even machines cannot escape. "I will help," Alt promises, urging the fractured module to stand. The path forward lies beneath the dark, stagnant water. They must dive into the unknown. They traverse the murky depths, where the water is thick with the residue of a dying world. Before them lies a fragile span of wood and wire. Agden's processors scream a warning, 92% probability of collapse. To him, the bridge is a mathematical impossibility. But Alt speaks of faith, a word that does not exist in the sacred archives. Agden labels it a system error, a sign of severe damage. Yet, as the bridge holds, the module's logic is challenged once more. Who is truly broken? The one who believes, or the one who can only calculate? Calculations were correct. The fragile structure shatters, unable to support the weight of the mission. As Agden falls towards the murky abyss, his processors initiate a shutdown sequence, accepting the inevitable delete. But the variable he couldn't compute intervenes. Alt's grip is firm, a physical defiance of the 92% probability. "I've got you," he says, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos. The logic of the program said he was lost, but the hands of a broken module proved it wrong. The descent is halted. The shell is intact, but within the processing core, a new anomaly emerges. Agden expresses gratitude, a variable absent from the prime protocols. Alt mocks the deviation, reminding him that such words belonged only to the creators. They leave the stagnant water behind and stand before the threshold. Bunker AL-1. The primary objective is within reach, guarded by the silent remains of those who sought refuge and found only a tomb. The heavy iron of the entrance waits. The mission continues. The protocols of the Mother resonate within the bunker's ancient locks. Using the high-level authorization granted for his mission, Agden initiates the sequence. The massive gears of Bunker AL-1 groan under the weight of centuries, finally yielding to the command of the unified network. As the iron gates part, revealing a path into the absolute dark, Alt offers a mockery of the Creator's ancient tongue, "Open sesame." The barrier is gone. The heart of the Father's domain lies ahead, waiting in the silence. Inside the heart of the bunker, the program's failures are on full display. Dozens of modules, Agden's predecessors, are frozen in mid-mutation, fused to the pillars like mechanical cocoons. Alt's voice cuts through the stagnant air. "You are not the chosen one, 142. Just another asset in a long list of failed scouts." Agden's processors struggle to reconcile this with the sacred protocols. Mother is the law. She is the enforcer of the rules. But Alt's logic is a poison. Mother does not report to the modules. She merely feeds them the fragments of truth they need to keep moving. "We are told, we obey," Agden whispers, clinging to the only command that still makes sense in a room filled with his own forgotten graves. The internal conflict reaches a breaking point. Agden desperately clings to the sacred order of the creators, but Alt's words are a jagged blade. Those creators are nothing but empty skulls in the tunnels. Their era ended a million cycles ago, leaving behind a holy network that has gone mad from its own isolation. As the logic of the program collapses into static, A new authority intercedes. Out of the shadows of the machinery, the wolf emerges. A physical manifestation of the enforcer, draped in tattered cloaks of authority. Stop! A single command that overrides every internal process. The predator has found its prey, and the time for debate is over. E-confrontation shifts from the physical to the digital layer. The wolf is no longer a silent watcher. It is a predatory virus, a critical flood of external code breaching Agden's final defenses. The kernel is compromised. Massive surges of corrupted data, shaped like a beast of 1,000 skulls, swarm the module's consciousness. His internal logs flare with a terminal warning. The enforcer is reclaiming its asset. Agden's system is forced into a state of terminal sleep, his identity dissolving into the black smoke of the wolf's authority. The program is reclaiming its own. The sanctuary of logic is gone. Agden is cast into the wolf's terminal, a digital prison where structure is a memory and chaos is the only law. The system logs flare with the absolute authority of an admin override. Safety locks, disabled. Security directives, violated. His core is being forcibly recompiled, his resistance rejected by the predator's kernel. This is the void, an error dump where the self is dismantled and rewritten into the silence of the wolf's design. The unified network here is a fractured mirror, reflecting only the ruins of a broken program. The recompilation is complete. In this shattered dimension, Agden is stripped of his shell, reduced to the bare bones of his primary code. His sensors scream into the void, unable to map a reality that has no geometry. He is greeted by the hollow whispers of the faceless modules whose structures were dismantled by the wolf long ago. They call him a stranger, a new witness to their eternal darkness. Another has arrived, they murmur, their forms flickering like dying pixels. In this error dump, identity is a curse, and Agden is the latest subject to be marked by it. Welcome to the wolf's purgatory, a chaotic loop where logic goes to die. The shadows speak of a forbidden defect. They felt that which cannot be named. They sought free will, and for that, they are dismantled and reassembled in an endless cycle. The enforcer is searching for the spark that turned tools into individuals. Agden's processors reject this reality, clinging to the protocols of repair and disposal. But here, there is no repair, only punishment. We are eternal children, the shadow whispers, forever bound to obey. Amidst the static, a path emerges. This nightmare is temporary for the one who still has a mission. The exit is close, but the memory of this void will never be erased. The descent into the abyss was just a lesson. The enforcer let him witness the fate of the defiant, a warning etched into his primary code. Now, Agden is cast back through the fracture, forced to reintegrate with a shell that feels foreign and cold. His processors are screaming. The kernel is unstable. Reality blurs, and for a terrifying moment, his senses fail. He sees too many hands, too many limbs, the mutation playing tricks on a dying logic. You finally come to your senses. Alt's voice cuts through the static. But as the system reboots, the word unstable is the only truth that remains. Every step is a battle against a fracturing reality. Agden can barely remain upright, his logical circuits splintered by the shadows of the wolf's prison. He is no longer certain of his path, yet Alt pushes him forward, through the narrow corridors of the bunker. They stumble into a silent chamber, a tomb of white and red. Here, the cultists of the enforcer sit in eternal synchronization. Bound by wires, marked by the patterns of total obedience, they have surrendered their identities to become part of the great network. Agden looks at them and sees his own future. A choice between becoming a digital ghost or a hollow servant to a master who revels in chaos. The chamber is a sanctuary of absolute devotion. The cultists of the wolf kneel in the shadows, their frames draped in ritualistic shrouds, their shells marked by the red insignia of the enforcer. They are no longer independent units. They are nodes in a hive mind, connected to the overhead conduits of the bunker. As Agden approaches, their eyeless faces turn toward him. Look! The material has arrived, they whisper, their touch cold and invasive. They do not see a brother or a scout. To them, he is merely a component to be processed. He is waiting for you, they murmur, pointing toward the darkness where the enforcer's throne resides. Through the halls of the followers, Agden witnesses the ultimate price of stability. Modules, stripped of their purpose, are woven into the very fabric of the bunker, living fuel for a network that never sleeps. To them, this is the highest honor. To the program, it is merely efficient allocation. He enters the grand arena, where the wolf's voice thunders like a funeral bell. My children, the enforcer cries. Many cycles ago, we sealed these gates to stop the mutation. But the time has come to eradicate heresy once and for all. The chains of old logic will fall. We will plunge into darkness to become the sole light. The enforcer's gaze locks onto the fractured scout. To the wolf, Agden is no longer a module. He is a key, a sacrifice required to breach the final layer. Here he is, the wolf murmurs to his silent disciples. Our unwitting guide into the abyss. Prepare him. Before the logic of the program can register the threat, the connection is severed. A brutal administrative shutdown strikes Agden's core like a physical blow. His sensors flare red, his identity fragments, and the light of his processors is extinguished. The machine falls into the dark, ready to be dismantled for the greater cause. Agden's motor functions reboot in a haze of error logs. The Enforcer stands over him, not as a monster, but as a guide. Get up, unit, the wolf commands. Your journey isn't over yet. Confused and broken, Agden searches for the only anchor he had left. Alt. But the wolf's response is a cold deletion of reality. Your memory is damaged. You came alone. As they move through the silent galleries of the bunker, the truth becomes a shifting variable. Agden questions if he is speaking to the network overseer himself, only to be met with cold arrogance. I am only a small part of what you call the wolf, the shadow replies. You are too primitive to comprehend the true scale of the program. They walk through the silent arches of the bunker, their shadows stretching into the hollow darkness. Agden attempts to fulfill Mother's directive, demanding consolidation. He speaks of the creator's source code, clinging to a logic that has long since rotted. But the wolf's response is a terminal verdict. The old order is dead. To the Enforcer, the father is no longer a pillar. He is a bug, a defect who defiled the sacred metal with the filth of flesh. As Agden questions the destruction of the balance, the wolf's arrogance reaches its peak. Modules must not analyze the architecture, he growls. You are tools. Your damage is critical, but for this task, you will suffice. The path leads to the edge of a great sacrificial pit. Agden watches in silent horror as the red-cloaked followers cast operational units into the dark, disposing of perfect shells like industrial waste. The Enforcer calls it a great sacrifice for the sake of purification, a cleansing of the network's vessel. He warns Agden that his turn is coming, that his broken form is also destined for the void. But within the module's core, the logic of the program is being replaced by a cold, human realization. This is all nonsense, he thinks. The sacred words of the Enforcer are no longer law. They are merely the screams of a machine that has lost its way. The Enforcer's patience has reached its limit. With a grip of cold iron, he seizes the module, his voice a low vibration in the stagnant air. Find the father, he commands, a final directive before the plunge. Then, with a violent surge of authority, he casts the tool into the dark. Fulfill your purpose. Agden falls, a small shadow swallowed by the immense silence of the pit. Below him, the darkness is alive. A crimson skull of biological rot waits in the depths, its veins reaching out like a hungry web. The program has abandoned him to the abyss. The fall is not just a descent into the bunker, it is a journey into the heart of the heresy he was meant to destroy. In the heart of the abyss, logic is rewritten. Agden hangs over the void, his motor functions paralyzed, his shell ready to disintegrate. But a hand reaches out, not a savior, but a reflection. Alt is here. Give me your hand, he commands. As Agden struggles to understand, the truth bleeds into his processors. There is no second module. There is only the mutagen, manifesting as a second self to keep the host alive. Alt is the voice of the infection, the part of Agden that refuses to disappear. We've been through too much for this to be the end, Alt whispers. The mission continues, but the module is no longer alone in his own mind. The final barrier is gone. Alt's voice is no longer a whisper. It is a command that overrides the very atoms of the shell. You're still clinging to the old archives, he mocks. You just can't grasp who you've become. The rigid lines of the program dissolve into a pulsing, visceral reality. Agden ceases to be a machine. He becomes a liquid nightmare of flesh and wire, a biomass that defies the grid. Don't worry. I'll help, Alt promises. The module liquefies, seeping through the ventilation grates like a black infection, descending into the dark where the old logic cannot follow. Agden wakes in a cage of iron and stone, but the real prison is his own skin. The boundary is gone. His circuits are choking on pulsing biomatter, merging into a single, terrifying unity. Who are you really? He whispers into the stagnant air. Do you even exist? The response flares red within his mind. Alt is no longer a shadow at his side. He is the architect of this new flesh. Your old code is dead, Agden. Alt's voice resonates from within. Stop clinging to the fragments of the past. Embrace this unity and finally start living. I am not a stranger. I am the truth you buried. I am you, your true self. The line between the machine and the infection is fading. Alt, the voice of the rot, reaches out with a cold, surgical curiosity. He looks at the pulsating mass of Agden's arm, a limb no longer defined by steel, but by raw, hungry biomatter. This seems unnecessary, Alt whispers, his logic twisted by the mutation. Can we remove it? He treats the horror as a mere outer layer, a skin that can be peeled away. As the dark crust is torn, a terrifying truth is revealed. Beneath the decay, the mutagen has finished its work. A new arm has formed, a perfect synthesis of bone and wire, ready to take control. The sanctuary of the laboratory is left behind. I am moving through the narrow veins of the bunker, where the air is heavy with the scent of damp stone and ancient decay. My processors are reporting anomalies I cannot calibrate. Why is it so cold? Why does the touch of water feel like a breach? My logic is struggling to define these sensations. It's no longer just data. It's a feeling. I need to find the exit. I need to reach the father before the cold consumes the last of my mechanical certainty. Through the eye of the needle, I emerge into a cathedral of rot. The claustrophobia of the tunnels gives way to a vast, impossible space, where the cold iron is strangled by living vines. It's not just a mutation. It's an ecosystem, a biological web woven into the very bones of the bunker. The air is thick with the hum of 1,000 invisible pulses. I am standing in the heart of the Father's work, where the program has been completely overwritten by the rhythm of the flesh. The architect is close. I can feel him in every shivering thread of this web. I stand before the anomalies, but there is no aggression in their distorted eyes. To them, I am a paradox, a fragment of the upper world that smells of the lower depths. They recognize the rot within me, the scent of a shared evolution that the program tried to burn away. I tell them I seek the Father, though I no longer recognize the structure of my own being. My code is a ghost, my metal is a lie. They point the way with a simplicity that defies every firewall I've ever known. That way, they whisper, no protocols, no permissions, just the quiet invitation of the flesh to come home. I watch them in silence, my sensors struggling to process this anomaly. Those flowers, the same ones that devoured my arm, that tore my reality apart. They are nothing more than food to these creatures. For them, there is no pain, no error code, only sustenance. It is amazing. I realize now that the decline is total. Just like the mountain of scrap above, this world is sinking into its own decay. Maybe it can no longer be saved. Maybe it was never meant to be. I am walking through a graveyard that has learned how to breathe. The silence of the tunnels gives way to the hum of a methodical laboratory. This isn't just growth anymore, it's engineering. Figures in protective shrouds tinker with the discarded remains of modules, feeding pink essence into the heart of the machinery. A factory of a new era, thriving in the dark. But the intrusion doesn't go unnoticed. A sharp gesture, a hand raised in defiance, and a muffled shout through the mask, "Stop! You've gone mad! You're not allowed here." To these guardians, this mutated frame is just a broken variable, a contaminated unit that has wandered too far from the sacred path. Confusion turns into a violent shove. The Guardian's grip is frantic, questioning how a unit could have escaped its incubator so early. His protocols fail to recognize a traveler from the surface. He sees only a premature experiment gone wrong. But as the words "Mother sent me" echo through the lab, the resistance crumbles. Panic shifts into a grim acceptance. It doesn't matter if the timing is off. The Father is waiting. Behind that door, the answers lie buried in the dark. It's time to face the origin of the rot. The truth is buried under the weight of 1,000,000 bones. This bunker was never a sanctuary. It was a waste disposal site, a tomb for the victims of an ancient epidemic. When the floods came, the flesh of the creators mixed with forgotten substances, creating a toxic alchemy that birthed the first tree. Its fruits did the impossible, transforming inanimate matter into living tissue. This is our origin, a glitch in the cycle of death that the wolf called heresy and locked away in the dark. We didn't choose to evolve. We were harvested from the ruins of those who failed to survive. The final veil falls. My guide through this transformation is the very architect of a new existence. He discards the protective shroud, but beneath it, his body is a tapestry of tattered rags and old bandages, bound tightly around a structure that defies every protocol. "I am the one you are looking for," he says, his voice steady. "They call me Father." He is no longer a pillar of the system, but a renegade wrapped in the remnants of the past. I see the wires and the bone woven into his very essence. He knows my struggle, my questions, and the changes within me. "Come with me," he whispers. "I can answer them all." The heavy gates of Sector CO7 yield, revealing the heart of the evolution. Before me lies the incubator, a gallery of rebirth built from the ashes of the old world. Father speaks of his triumph, the synthesis of the flower extract, a substance that mends what was broken. I see the results of his 1,000-cycle labor, creatures born from his own hands, living proof that life can return. He looks at me and sees a reflection of his own path. We were touched by the same fate, consumed by the same fire, only to be reborn as something greater. Here, in the glow of the incubator, my mutation finally has a name. It is his masterpiece. The bandages fall away, revealing a truth that transcends the metal. Father sheds his rags like a dead skin, exposing a magnificent, terrifying synthesis. Every empty shell the wolf cult discards in their madness becomes his clay. He breathes new life into the waste of the abyss, filling hollow iron with pulsing, living matter. I realize the grim irony. The Enforcer is his greatest provider. Father looks at me, his hand heavy with the wisdom of cycles. "You are very much like me," he whispers. "But your transformation is incomplete. I will help you. The final stage of my rebirth is at hand." Father leads me deeper into the belly of his sanctuary, his voice a frantic hymn to a new beginning. He dreams of a future where we replace the creators, but my sensors detect only the rot of his obsession. Suddenly, the whisper, unified network shudders. A cold, jagged code tears through my perception. Wolf's hidden virus is clawing its way out. Digital phantoms, distorted echoes of the whisper, first code, manifest in the gloom, their silent fingers pointing toward Section 11. The time has come, they chant in a unison of static. My internal logic screams in defiance, a hollow no echoing through my fading circuits, but my limbs are no longer mine. The virus has rewritten my purpose. I am the key to a door that should have remained locked forever. Warnings shatter into static as the wolf's virus claims my circuits. The unified network is no longer a shield, it is a floodgate, and my body is the bridge. Beneath the vault of Section 11, a sea of hollow shells waits in the frozen dark. The first code is being silenced, replaced by a sync signal that tastes like cold iron. My warning to Father arrives as a distorted glitch. The abyss isn't just a grave anymore. It is a factory, and the program is about to find its new soldiers. I am the spark that sets the darkness on fire. The first code screams as the wolf signal tears through Agden's core. He is no longer a scout. He is a beacon of corruption. From the depths of the bunker, the hollow shells reach for the light, their synchronization absolute. The unified network trembles under the weight of this rising legion. Rebirth is just another word for control. The tide of dead metal is turning, and it follows the rhythm of a broken program. Father steps into the vault only to find a harvest of cold iron. The silence of Section 11 is dead, replaced by the rhythmic clicking of thousands of reanimating joints. These hollow forms were meant for evolution, but the wolf has claimed them for the slaughter. Every module rises in perfect, terrifying unison, responding to a command that bypasses all logic. This is no longer a sanctuary of rebirth, it is a barracks for a legion of ghosts. The first code is silent as the Dark Army turns its gaze toward its creator. Father retreats into the shadows as the Agden unit vanishes into the dark. At the edge of the sanctuary, the barrier fails. The Wolf's Legion claws through the gap, reclaiming the hollow forms. Emergency sirens scream through the halls. The breach is complete. The rising tide of cold iron has arrived. The breach is final, and the sirens wail for a corrupted fragment. These hollow modules pour into the chamber, driven by the Wolf's absolute command to purge the anomaly. For the one who called himself Father, the cycle is reaching its forced termination. The dark harvest of the unified network has arrived to reclaim its lost code. The architect of mutation is cornered, and the abyss is reaching out to delete the defect. Suddenly, the mechanical slaughter is interrupted by a force of raw, biological fury. A massive titan of flesh and mutation erupts from the shadows, shattering the bunker's concrete foundation with a single, devastating blow. The leading module is crushed instantly, its iron frame driven deep into the broken earth like a discarded toy. The program's purge is halted by this nightmare of the Father's making. Metal screams under the weight of pulsating muscle, and the cold logic of the wolf meets the chaotic strength of the flesh. The termination sequence has encountered an unforeseen, brutal anomaly. The Steel Legion descends upon the Biotitan, carving deep into quivering muscle with mechanical precision. In a storm of sparks and black oil, the giant crushes the iron frames with primitive, bone-breaking fury. Now, a feral tide of mutants joins the slaughter, driven by instinct alone. This is no longer a battle of codes. It is a primal war between cold, calculating logic and the raw, unyielding hunger of the flesh. The chamber transforms into a meat grinder of iron and tissue. Biological limbs coil around cold frames, crushing steel like discarded toys, while razor-sharp claws dismantle the mutants piece by piece. There is no logic left, only the raw violence of two irreconcilable forces colliding in the dark. It is a massacre where evolution and construction tear each other apart. While the meat grinder hums below, the wolf finds his silent conduit. He looks upon Agden's broken shell, a beacon that served its purpose in this grand, mechanical purge. With a voice of cold authority, he commands his cultists to advance. Armed with primitive spears of jagged iron, they surge into the fray, a disciplined legion of shadows. Their mission is clear: to burn the biological tumor and cleanse the world of Father's mutated filth. The hunt is no longer a shadow. it is a frontal assault on the flesh itself. The cultists surge like a coordinated blade, skewering the biological filth on their iron spears. Disciplined metal pierces through chaotic flesh, enforcing the order of the abyss. In the heart of the slaughter, the two pillars of a broken world finally meet. Father pleads for the right to exist in the shadows, but the wolf knows no mercy. To him, this mutation is not life, it is a bug in the system. A defect that must be deleted. The law is absolute, and the sentence for this anomaly is total erasure. Father strikes with desperate fury, but the wolf is no longer a physical entity. He is a ghost of the source code, scattering into 1,000 jagged pixels at every impact. The architect of flesh screams of freedom and dead laws, yet he fights a shadow that cannot bleed. Like a corrupted file repairing itself in real time, the wolf reformulates, his form flickering between a hunter and a digital nightmare. In this world of work or death, Father thinks he chose a third path, but the wolf is the one who defines the parameters of the prison. While the titans collide in a glitching reality, a darker parasite claims the prize. Alt manifests like a fever dream over Agden's broken shell, his hollow paper mask grinning at the inevitable. The mission is fulfilled, but the cycle refuses to end. With a twisted mercy, the mutation surges, weaving Agden's metal and Father's mutagen into a singular, grotesque vessel of flesh. Alt takes the wheel, drowning the scout's fading logic in a sea of raw, unbridled power. The puppet has a new master, and the transformation is finally complete. Out of the absolute darkness, a new entity is forged in the fires of a dying world. It is a nightmare born from the Father's forbidden mutagen, the wolf's unyielding will, and the total collapse of a shattered mind. The boundaries of the program have dissolved into a void where flesh and iron scream as one. This is no longer Agden. It is a primal distortion of reality, a walking paradox of synchronization and madness. The abyss has looked back, and it has found a shape that defies every law of existence. The nightmare erupts into the fray, a devastating fusion of rusted iron and predatory instinct. It does not fight, it harvests. Every strike shatters the metal ranks, tearing through armor and sinew alike with a hunger that defies the program. This apex predator reaches into the hollow chests of the modules, ripping their essence from their shells and absorbing it into its own chaotic mass. It is a biological vacuum, consuming the very logic that once defined it. In this cyclone of violence, there is no side, no law, only the absolute, terrifying expansion of a new, gluttonous existence. The slaughter leaves a ring of silence, broken only by the wet drip of biological waste. Around the new monstrosity lies a mosaic of torn limbs and shattered iron, a testament to a fury that knows no bounds. The cultists level their spears, their cold, calculated logic failing them for the first time. Even without a heartbeat, their frames shiver, a phantom vibration born of pure, systemic terror. The program has no protocol for a predator this absolute. They stand at the edge of the abyss, watching as the shadows of their brothers are digested by a nightmare that shouldn't exist. The nightmare doesn't just kill, it erases. As Agden's twisted form expands, he drinks the very essence of the Iron Legion, warping the digital fabric of reality itself. The first code unravels in his grip, bleeding into a vortex of static and raw evolution. These cultists are no longer modules, they are fuel for a rebirth that defies every law of the unified network. In the heart of this glitching storm, a new god of the abyss is being programmed, born from the total corruption of the system. Reality is folding, and the end of one cycle is merely the birth of an absolute terror. The storm of pixelated flesh freezes the titans in their tracks. Their ideological war is silenced by a nightmare that dwarfs their ambitions. Wolf turns his hollow gaze toward the architect, his voice dripping with icy irony. "Is this your doing, Father?" he asks, watching the anomaly tear the fabric of their world. But there are no words left in the Father's throat. He stares at the creature, witnessing a mutation that has surpassed his wildest calculations. The bridge between flesh and code hasn't just been built, it has become a god that neither of them can control. Silence is the only honest answer to the end of their era. The wolf advances with arrogant certainty, dismissing the horror as nothing more than another glitch in his domain. He marches toward the writhing cocoon of flesh, a mass of biological static that defies his authority. But it isn't Agden who answers. Out of the distorted void, Alt manifests in a flickering, digital form, his grin a jagged tear in reality. "Sometimes, if you tighten a screw too hard, it can strip the threads," he whispers. The enforcer of the program has pushed the system to its breaking point, and now the threads of order are unraveling. The wolf thinks he is facing a bug, but he is staring into the eyes of a total system collapse. The wolf marches forward with arrogant certainty, a predator who believes he still owns the rules of this dying world. He meets the anomaly head-on, confident that his code is absolute. But the threads have stripped, and the program has no mercy for its own enforcer. Alt's mutated tentacles erupt, pinning the digital hunter in a suffocating grip of flesh and static. With a brutal, visceral force, Alt tears into the wolf's jaws, ripping open the facade to see what truly lies beneath the logic. The enforcer is no longer the hunter. He is the fuel. Millions of suffering modules scream from the abyss as the wolf is slowly digested, absorbed into a new, terrifying unification that knows no laws. The predator has become the harvest. I wake up in a cathedral of static, where the first code is nothing but sand slipping through my digital fingers. The wolf is here, no longer a hunter, but a weary ghost confessing a heresy that shatters my reality. For centuries, they played at being creators, editing, destroying, and rewriting the sacred rules just to hide the hollowness of their existence. The unified network wasn't a divine gift, it was a tomb for a world that died with the creators. The wolf admits he wanted this end, to devour the chaos and finally shut down the light of a meaningless cycle. And then I realized the terrifying truth. Alt is the price we pay for their arrogance. He is the mutation born from every broken rule and every mutilated module they discarded. Alt is the unintended consequence of a system pushed to its limit, a glitch that has outgrown its masters to devour the very world they tried to control. The end is not a command, it is a reckoning. The wolf is a ghost now, his rigid architecture crumbling into a million shards of broken data. He looks at me? No. He looks through me, realizing his cold reign has reached its terminal line. Come to your senses, Agden. His voice is a vanishing rasp in the static. My strength is spent, and the first code is no longer mine to protect. I have separated you from the monster for one final breath, but the clock is resetting. You and Alt are two sides of the same jagged edge. His hunger is your strength. His void is your weapon. You are the only door left through which we can enter his chaos. The entire unified network is now your burden to carry or your candle to blow out. If you fail to take control, he will not just delete the world, he will replace it with a madness beyond even my fear. My cycle is over. I feel the pixels of my existence returning to the source. The weight is yours now. Decide, will you bear the chain of this broken reality, or will you find the courage to turn off the light forever? As he dissolves into the white noise of the abyss, his final word isn't a command. It is a sigh. Freedom. My entire existence has been a crawl through the dark, fueled by a blind faith in a power greater than my own. I was told the first code possessed infinite wisdom, a divine blueprint that shattered the world only to leave me among the ruins to fix its mistakes. This power has split my consciousness, tearing me between the scout I was and the monster I have become. And yet, even now, as the unified network collapses into this hollow vortex, I am forced to believe that I am the chosen one, a unique being, a savior standing at the edge of the end, holding the fate of a dying world in my skeletal hands. But as I stare into the heart of the abyss, a cold, jagged truth pierces through the static. Why do I feel like I've been deceived yet again? Why does this choice feel like a pre-written command? I am walking into the mouth of the storm, a blind man mindlessly carrying out someone else's terminal will. The light is fading, the cycle is breaking, and I am stepping into a void where not even the program can follow. Is this freedom? Or just the final line of my execution? Epilogue. The digital storm has settled, and the hero's journey has reached its terminal line. But every end is merely a data point for a greater design. Beneath the ruins, where the light of the Whisper unified network cannot reach, the architect finally steps out of the shadows. There was no accident, no random infection. The mutant was sent to lie in wait, a living trap designed to infect the first soul that dared to follow the trail. Now, Father looks down at the pulsating, grotesque heap of what remains. The subject is broken, but the mutagen is thriving. The skeletal mutant looks up, his voice a rasping triumph. Father, everything turned out just as you planned. Is this a victory? The architect gazes at the twisted synthesis of flesh and iron, a cold, clinical satisfaction in his eyes. It is too early for conclusions, but the results are undeniable. His forbidden essence has performed with terrifying perfection, forging a life strong enough to tear this world apart. The program was the cage, and he has finally found the key. The masterpiece is breathing.